Hey friends, hope you're doing well. Today, we'll dive into the story of a boy who went from being broke and hopeless to becoming a millionaire entrepreneur by the age of 28. But let me tell you, this isn't a smooth ride. At every stage, he faced failures, betrayals, and moments when giving up seemed easier than fighting on. Meet James Miller, born on August 3, 1995, in a small town in Ohio. He grew up in a working-class family. His dad worked at a factory, and his mom picked up waitressing shifts. Money was always tight. At 14, James wanted to buy a new pair of sneakers, but his parents simply couldn't afford them. Instead, he wore the same pair for nearly 3 years. That sting of not having enough stayed with him for life. By the time he turned 18, while his friends headed off to college, James was working double shifts, stocking shelves at Walmart in the mornings and delivering pizzas at night. He dreamed of more, but reality kept pulling him down. In 2015, James launched his first business, reselling cheap sunglasses online. He used his entire savings of $400. At first, it worked. He sold 15 pairs in the first week, and he thought, "This is it, my breakthrough." But soon, complaints started rolling in. The sunglasses broke easily, shipping delays frustrated customers, and PayPal froze his account. Within 3 months, James was broke again, staring at a pile of unsold boxes. At 22, James thought he had learned his lesson. This time, he invested in a friend's phone repair shop. They rented a tiny space, bought tools, and started working. For a few months, things seemed okay. But then his friends started dipping into the cash register, bills piled up, and they couldn't keep up with expenses. By the end of 6 months, James had lost $2,000. His parents told him to stop chasing dreams and get a stable job. His friends joked about how he was always failing. James laughed along, but inside, he was crushed. In 2019, while folding clothes at his part-time retail job, James noticed something. Young people went crazy over hoodies, graphic tees, and streetwear, but big brands were charging $80 for a hoodie. He thought, what if I made my own brand? Affordable, trendy, built for people like us. But the problem was obvious. He had no fashion experience, no investors, and barely $700 to his name. Still, he decided to take the leap. At 24 years old, James borrowed $1,000 from his uncle and partnered with a small local print shop to make his first batch of hoodies. The shipment arrived, and James was buzzing with excitement. This was it, his shot at proving everyone wrong. But when he opened the boxes, his heart dropped. The stitching was terrible, designs were crooked, and colors faded after just one wash. Angry customers demanded refunds, and his uncle began asking when he'd get his money back. That night, James sat on the floor of his tiny room, staring at the defective pile of clothes. He was exhausted, broke, and humiliated. Most people would have quit. But James whispered to himself, "If I fail again, I'll fail learning something. But I won't quit here." Determined not to repeat the same mistake, James searched online for manufacturers. He found one in California who promised premium quality at cheap rates. Excited, James wired $1,500, nearly everything he had. Weeks passed. No delivery. No responses. The supplier had disappeared. James had been scammed. He felt sick to his stomach. Once again, his parents told him to stop. His mom even begged him, "James, please, just get a stable job. You're wasting your life." But James wasn't ready to give up. Out of desperation, James started selling the leftover hoodies from his first batch at a local flea market for $15 each. To his surprise, teenagers loved them, not because they were perfect, but because they were different. One kid even posted a picture on Instagram, tagging the hoodie with the caption, "Best $15 ever spent." That single post got James 5 more customers the very next day. It wasn't much, but it was proof. people actually liked his designs. Encouraged, James decided to scale. He applied for a $5,000 credit card, convinced he could pay it back once sales grew. He ordered a new batch from a more reliable supplier this time. But just as things seemed to turn around, the COVID-19 pandemic hit in early 2020. Flea markets closed. Local shops shut down. His boxes of hoodies sat in his apartment, unsold. James maxed out his card just trying to stay afloat. Calls from the bank became a daily nightmare. Locked inside, James turned to Instagram and TikTok. He started posting short videos of his hoodies, modeling them himself in his backyard. At first, no one cared. But one video, of him spray painting a custom design live, suddenly blew up. Within a week, his follower count jumped from 200 to 10,000, and people started asking where they could buy. James rushed to set up a website, even though it barely worked. But in the first 48 hours, he made $1,200 in sales. For the first time in years, James felt hope. But just as things started looking up, James got an unexpected email. A lawyer from a big clothing brand accused him of copying their design and threatened legal action if he didn't stop selling. James panicked. He barely had enough money for rent, let alone lawyers. For 2 nights, he couldn't sleep, wondering if this was the end of his dream yet again. Identity, the underdog brand. He told his followers the story of being broke, scammed, and underestimated. To his surprise, people loved it. They didn't just buy hoodies, they bought into his story. By the end of 2020, James had made $50,000 in sales. It wasn't millions, but it was survival. And more importantly, it was momentum. By the start of 2021, James finally felt like he had momentum. His small brand, The Underdog, was getting attention on Instagram. Orders trickled in, not thousands, but enough to pay rent and cover his debts. For the first time in years, James wasn't just surviving, he was building. But behind the scenes, James was exhausted. He packed every hoodie himself, printed labels, answered customer emails, and even did customer service calls. One night, after staying up until 3 a.m. packing 80 orders, he collapsed on the couch, thinking, "Is this what success looks like? Because I'm drowning." He realized if he kept working like this, he'd burn out before ever making it big. In mid-2021, James took a leap and hired his first employee, a college student, to help with packing and shipping. It cost money he barely had, but suddenly, James could focus on marketing and design instead of just tape and boxes. The gamble paid off. Sales doubled within 3 months. But not every decision worked out. James brought in a business partner, a guy he met online who promised to handle advertising. At first, sales spiked. But soon James noticed thousands of dollars missing from the business account. The so-called partner had been siphoning money. James had to cut ties, losing both the funds and months of trust. It was a brutal lesson. Not everyone who offers help actually wants you to succeed. Still, James pressed on. By 2022, he was making around $10,000 a month. Not crazy millionaire money, but enough to pay off his debts and finally move into a slightly bigger apartment. But then, something unexpected happened. One day, a mid-level rapper wore one of James's hoodies in a music video. James hadn't even sent it, a fan must have passed it along. Overnight, orders exploded. His website crashed under the demand. In 2 weeks, James sold out his entire stock, making more in a fortnight than he had in the past 6 months. But with growth came chaos. Factories delayed shipments. Customers complained about late orders. Some even called his brand a scam. James's heart sank as he saw angry reviews. Instead of ignoring it, James went on social media and made a bold move. He admitted everything. He told his audience about the delays, his struggles, and promised to do better. Surprisingly, people respected the honesty. Orders didn't stop, they grew. By the end of 2022, James's brand wasn't just a small hoodie company. It had grown into a full streetwear line, with jackets, hats, and sneakers. He had a small team, reliable manufacturers, and a loyal fan base. Sales topped $500,000 that year. And finally, in 2023, just before his 28th birthday, James crossed a milestone he once thought was impossible. He became a self-made millionaire. James's journey wasn't about overnight success. It was about failure after failure, risk after risk, and the courage to keep going when everything screamed to quit. From cheap sunglasses that broke in a week, to being scammed by suppliers.